Students, welcome back to another Star Tutors live stream. It's been a while since we've done one of these for those that have been keeping up with the channel, but we're back. We're going to be doing a lot more of these. We're going to have a lot of videos coming out here in the next few weeks, including for AP exams for any of those students that are preparing for that now or in the future. Look out for those videos, particularly covering ACT, or rather ACT, AP math. So again, look out for those videos. Guys, if you're joining the live chat today, can everybody give me a thumbs up? Or if you're watching the recording, can you give me a thumbs up below the video? If you're watching the live chat, you can obviously ask questions if you just post in the chat. So if you haven't done that before, please make sure you give me a thumbs up just to make sure that you guys are paying attention, following along. And then if you guys are watching, if you're watching the recorded version of this, you can just ask questions in the comments section, and one of our teachers or tutors will be happy to answer those questions. So hopefully this is instructive. It's not going to be a very long video today, but it's probably going to be one of our most important videos that we have filmed, certainly for a while. It's been a while since we filmed these anyway, but this is going to be one of the most important videos that we filmed just in general, and it's only going to be 15 minutes long. So I really encourage you guys to pay attention. Okay, so the most important thing, one thing that I think is lost on students very frequently, especially if you haven't looked at the SAT math test before, and again, we're covering SAT math today, but one of the things that's very frequently lost on students is the fact that this math test, the math section of the SAT, is not a content test. Okay, this is not content, right? So don't think about this as content, not content. And the reason I say that, or I should say not difficult content, right? Let's rephrase this. It's not difficult content in the sense of, what you could potentially take in high school. I need everybody to understand that, right? That if you take an AP math class, that's obviously much higher level content, right? Than what you would see on the SAT math section. So if we know that it's not content related, it has to be something else. And the difficulty is the identification of operative words. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, and I'm going to try to show you guys how important this can be. So again, if you have any questions, if you're joining us for the live stream, you can just ask questions or give a thumbs up in the chat or below the video. If you're watching the recording later, you can ask questions in the comments section below. But we want you to ask as many questions as you have so that, because I'm sure that other students will ask those as well. Before we get going with this idea of identification, and I'll specifically write, and I would have everybody write this, identification of operative words, operative, right? That's the key thing here with this lesson, operative words. I want everybody to know that we are going to use the April 2019 SAT exam. I've posted that in the chat, and one of our teachers or tutors will post that after the video is done in the description, so you guys will have access to that. But if you want to follow along, you can open that April 2019 guide, which again is posted in the chat, and you can follow along with what the lesson really is trying to detail today. Okay, so again, April 2019, April 2019, SAT. We're looking at the math sections and specifically the no calc section, and we're trying to identify operative words. Now, this is particularly important as it applies to the three most common topics. And if you can believe it, right, if you can get over this idea, and for those that have looked at this test for a long time, you guys know what I'm talking about, is that this is not content. If it was a content test, they could just give you a AP Calc exam and say that this is the test that you need to get into college. There's a reason that they don't do that. Okay, because the three most common question types on the SAT math test, if you guys can believe this, are first and foremost linear equations, right? Y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. Okay, so we'll just say, even say right here, y equals mx plus b, which is a topic that many of you have covered years ago, right? I mean, we're talking years ago in terms of y equals mx plus b. Number two, second most important topic is factoring. Again, it's such a common topic when you take an Algebra 2 class. So that's number two. And number three is systems of equations. These three subject matters, right, three content topics, these three alone will make up, let's say, 30% of the test. 30% of the test can be judged on these three topics alone. And I'm going to show you what that means. So those are all very, very common Algebra 2 topics, right? Those are very, very common Algebra 2 topics that none of us should be worried about. There's no reason to be worried about content right now. There is a reason to worry that if you're taking a timed, right, let's be very frank and upfront, this is a timed, stressful exam, right? There's no doubt about that. And so if we are not looking for these operative words, we're going to be in big trouble when the adrenaline starts to increase, right? Our adrenaline levels start to increase, and suddenly we're not as functioning as we might be for a school test. The other thing that I want to bring up, that if you guys have not already done this, okay, I would highly encourage you, strongly encourage you to download our app, Star U. If you want to get better at these practice questions, all you have to do is log into Star U. You can create a free Star U student account. You're right, you'll see this in the background of my screen. If you click Lessons and Practice Problems on Star U, so Lessons and Practice Problems, it'll be right there on the home screen. Hopefully everybody sees that. You'll see it right up front here. You can track your progress. You click SAT Math on the following screen. And then you guys will see some of these lesson chapters that I'm mentioning, right? If we're talking about systems of equations, go ahead and read about the systems of equations. And you'll actually see in the background of my screen here, there's a magnifying glass that says to identify systems of equations problems, look for 2 equations with 2 unknowns. We're going to tell you beyond this video what these questions actually look like and how to identify them while you're taking the test. So again, if you haven't already, please, many of you have, for those that are watching the channel, many of you guys have already done this, but if you have not created your free Star U student account, I highly recommend that you do that, strongly recommend that you do that, because it will really, really help you track your progress for these 3 lessons in particular, okay? So hopefully that's helpful as we keep moving on. But again, guys, going back to this idea of an operative word, what qualifies as an operative word? Well, let's take linear equations, for example. And like I said, this is not going to be a super long video. It's really just using the best example. Again, linear equations, the most common, easily the most common question type. And that should, again, tell you everything you need to know about the SAT math section. Thumbs up, guys, if that makes sense. Right? Thumbs up if that makes sense. That linear equations, if you know that's the most difficult topic that's covered on or the most common, rather, topic that's covered on the SAT math sections, that should tell you everything that you need to know in terms of the difficulty in content. We need to find operative words, right, or operative, even words or ideas, right, related to linear equations. So anytime that those questions come up, we immediately know what they're asking. Okay, we immediately know, and it's super straightforward. We're looking for a combination of one of these things, right? If we see the word linear equations, right? Hopefully everybody remembers linear equations. Okay, if we see this word linear equations, obviously circle it, and now we know what we're dealing with. If we see a graph, right? Linear equations are always dealing with a line. Graph of line, right? If you see a graph in an XY coordinate plane and it contains a line, something like this, you are looking at a linear equation. You're going to be dealing with linear equations in some way. Okay, so those are 2 of them. If you see the word line, just line, right? This is very straightforward. If you just see the word line, you're going to be dealing with linear equations. And most importantly, the one that's used, there's actually 2 more, right? If you see an input-output table, 95% of the time you're going to be dealing with linear equations, right? Well, this is one that students miss all the time because this goes all the way back to pre-algebra, where if you have x and y or x and f of x, that's a very, very common linear equation problem most of the time. All right, so if you see any of these words, and I'm going to show you, this is a very real April 2019 SAT. This was a very real test. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about on just one section. I guarantee that if you guys look through any SAT math section, and particularly on the No Calculator over the course of the last 3 years, you will see the exact same thing on any SAT math test that you've ever seen or taken. Promise you, okay? So anytime you see an input-output table, if you see the word line, right? So number 1, linear equations. 2, if you see the graph, right? The graph of a line, and they don't say line, but they just give you the graph, right? Or the coordinate plane. 3, if you see the word line. And 4, if you see an input-output table, that's great. Now 5 is potentially the most important. Okay, the 5th, right? Let me just write it down here. So you get linear equations is 1. So words. Say words or ideas to look out for. Look out for, right? Linear equations, or just the word linear or linear equations, right? If you see the word linear, that means line. Number 2, if you see the graph of a line, coordinate plane, graph of a line, right? And a line, of course, just being like that. 3, if you see the term line, just the word line, look out for it. Okay, 4, if you see an input-output table. 9, that input-output tables can really refer to any function, right? Any graph, but look out for those. And then number 5 is easily the most important because it's the one that throws students off the most frequent. Okay, so does everybody have these down? For those that are watching live, or if you're watching the recording, you guys can just click the thumbs up below. But for anybody that's watching, hopefully everybody has those 4 down. And the number 5 is easily the one that's used that students don't recognize, and I'm not sure why, is some variation, right? Some variation in an actual equation, some variation of an equation that resembles y equals mx plus b. And this is the most important one. I cannot stress enough, and we'll see this in this exact test, right? I can't stress enough how important it is to be looking out for these types of questions where they give you an equation and it doesn't immediately look familiar. That's the point of the SAT math sections. You've seen enough y equals mx plus b questions in your school life, right? Your academic life. You've seen enough of those. So that's not what they're trying to test you on. They know that that's going to be, colleges know that that's going to be shown within your grades for an algebra and algebra 2 class. That's not what they care about. Instead, what they care about is your ability to critically think in a way that a textbook is not going to give you a problem. And there's numerous examples of this. Critically think, right? That's really what we're looking for. So if we stick to these, right? If we stick to all of these and we memorize just these operative words, I'm just giving you the operative words. You'll have to do the rest of the work on your own. But I want to explain this, that if you guys find these 5 operative words anytime on a no calculator section or a calculator section for the SAT, you will be absolutely amazed at how many questions apply to to just linear equations, right? There are 20 questions. Let's go through it together, right? There are 20 total questions on the no calc section. Let's count up how many of those would be linear equations, and I guarantee that it's going to be a similar number to any SAT math form that you look at. Thumbs up, guys, if this makes sense, the importance of identifying these. Okay, so again, we don't necessarily think of question number 4, right, as a linear equation problem. Oh no, I'm just kidding, we do. We definitely do, right? Question number 4 says the equation of the line, right? And I know that many of you are going to get question number 4 right, because we know that the SAT multiple choice questions are in order of difficulty. But if you're committed to this, right, and immediately when you see the word line, every single one of you, the moment that you see the word line, should write down y equals mx plus b. The moment that you see one of these operative words, okay, I cannot stress this enough, that if you are committed to this, the moment that you see one of these things, if you are committed to this discipline and you circle that, you circle the word line, then all of a sudden on more difficult questions, not like number 4, you will have discipline to get those questions right as well. So right away we see line. So that's number 4. There's one question that's linear equations. Okay? Technically speaking, right, this function, right, if you look at this is what I'm talking about. Question number 3, it's not totally a linear equation, but watch what happens if I distribute this out, right? F of x, and I'm going to distribute this for question number 3. Again, we're using the April 2019 test, is 2x minus 2, right, plus 2. And now all of a sudden we get f of x is equal to 2x, essentially plus 0. Well, f of x equals 2x plus 0 looks a lot like y equals mx plus b, doesn't it? Again, that's not the premise of this question necessarily, but we are using a linear equation even for question number 3 where that's not the total premise. So really there's 2 questions where knowing about y equals mx plus b is going to help us. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see if we can find other ones. So guys, this is a tough one, but this is one right here, right? 9, a taxi driver charges initial fare of $3. That looks a lot like plus 3, right? $3 plus 40 cents for each 1/4 of a mile, 1/5 rather of a mile driven. If the total charge of the ride, y equals, right, 40 cents per 1/5 of a mile, 0.4x plus 3, all of a sudden we're looking very similarly at y equals mx plus b. That's now 3 questions in the first 9 that deal with y equals mx plus b. Okay, 3 questions in the first 9. Let's keep going. Let's look for these operative words. We're looking for operative words. This is a great example. Question number 13. Okay, question 13 gives us this equation. And this is what I was talking about with that fifth point. Right away, if we're looking out for this, if we know that linear equations are one of the most prominent question types on the entire test, and we see this equation, C of t, right, that's very complicated. Without even reading the definition of this just looks very complicated. 25t, right, plus 228.75. But all of a sudden, if I just make this a lot easier for myself, and I say this just looks very similar to y equals, right, m x plus b, I now know that whatever they ask me, right, 50.25, if I'm looking out for these questions, thumbs up, guys. This is number 13. This is not as easy of an SAT question. I'm just, right, if I line that up and I'm aware of that point number 5 that we just made, I know right away that m is equal to the slope of that equation. It's y equals mx plus b. How is that going to help me? I'm not sure. But I know right away that slope is increasing, decreasing, so that's what I'm going to be looking out for in the answer choices. All right, guys, thumbs up if that makes sense. That's question number 13. So now we have 4 out of the first 13 questions are dealing with linear equations. Let's see if we can find any other ones. Okay, y equals... Okay, and then number 19 here is as well, right? If we get 4x minus 5y is equal to 2, right? If we rework this question, we can see that this is going to be, and again, you don't need to necessarily do this on every question, but we get negative 5y is equal to negative 4x plus 2. Divide by negative 5, all of a sudden, we once again have a y equals mx plus b question on this test, right? So roughly speaking, if we say that 4 out of the 20 questions, I mean, roughly speaking, that's 20% of the test, or 5 out of the 20 questions, 20 to 25% of the test are linear equations. Now, that's not totally true, but without a doubt, 40% of this test, 30 to 40% of this test, deal with one of those 3 topics that we just mentioned. Look at number 18, right? Here we have a system of equations. That was one of the 3 most prominent topics on the SAT math. Okay, and if you look out for systems of equations and you just practice those, like I said, you can just go into Star U and do practice questions that are directly related to systems of equations, just like you'd see on the SAT math tests. Okay, so if you're really good about identifying these, there's no reason why you can't practice very, very specific question types as you work through this, right? Let's see if we can find another one. This is under the factoring section. Technically, we're going to have to use the quadratic formula, but that's all within factoring as well. Here's another factoring question, right? Learning how to factor with x to the 4th. I don't know if there's any other ones equivalent. All of the rest of this is pretty basic algebra, so that's even better. No, Judy rent a car for you. Yeah, guys, look at this. 15 miles driven. This is actually a y equals mx plus b question as well. So we're talking, guys, between these 3 concepts, right? If you get really good about identifying, one of these 3, okay, linear equations, right? And we just talked about the operative words, how to identify those questions. Linear equations, factoring, and systems of equations, 30% doesn't do this justice. It's more like 40%, at least 40% of the no-calc section is going to be dealing with one of those 3 topics. And again, the point of this video is not to be too long or too overly wordy. It's to show you that if you line up every topic on the SAT math section, right? You line up every topic and you learn what the operative words are for those topics, right? Every single time I see systems of equations, this is what I'm going to do. This test is not very difficult. The math test on the SAT is significantly easier than it is on the ACT. And for anybody that's in an AP class right now, you should know that you can absolutely dominate the SAT math section, right? That's not going to be a problem. However, right, we can only do that if we're actually able to identify these question types when we are timed, when we are stressed out, when our adrenaline is really high. If we're not able to do those things, we're in big trouble, because even if we know every math concept in the world, that doesn't necessarily help us in a situation where we can't identify those math concepts. So the first thing that I would do if I were you and you're struggling on the SAT math section is start with linear equations, right? Start with this first one, because everybody knows linear equations. There's no Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 class in the world that doesn't teach you y equals mx plus b or some variation of that. Linear equations is the first thing that everybody starts with. Once you have those operative words down, I encourage you to comb through any SAT math test to find how many questions actually deal with linear equations. And if you follow our guide that we just went through, and you look for one of these 5 things, right? Linear, if you see the word linear, if you see a graph of a line, if you see the word line, right? You see these are all words in the quotes. If you see an input-output table, or if you see some variation of y equals mx plus b and you are looking out for it. This is a great example of this is like number 13 on the April 2019 SAT Math No Calculator section. You will be absolutely amazed that if you just start with linear equations, how many questions you can actually find. Just briefly to end the video, like I said, this isn't going to be a particularly long video. If anybody has any questions, please let me know now. Okay, don't hesitate to ask those questions. But if you look at even the calculator section as we scroll down here a little bit, we're going to start to see even more of these linear equation types. Okay, right, like even this one, potentially, which of the following has a system, right, of no solution. System of equations, this is actually 15 on the calculator section, is a combination of systems of equations and linear equations for that one. Combination there. Let's see if we can find any other ones. Okay, 22, linear equation, right? So now we're at 2 questions, 7 questions total between the 2 math tests. 7 out of 58 questions, guys. That's more than 10%, and we're not even done looking for this, right? Look at all these answer choices. Remember some derivative of the y equals mx plus b, 26. That's going to be dealing with linear equations in some form. 27, 28, both linear equations. So that's 10, 11 questions. Now we're at 20% of the test so far. 20% of the SAT math test is just dealing with linear equations, y equals mx plus b. That does not make those easy, right? Here we have another systems of equations problem. This is going to be an input-output table, so look out for it, right? Look out for linear equations. It's not to guarantee that that's going to happen. But again, guys, that's 20% of the test is just linear equations. Forget about the other 2, factoring and systems of equations, just linear equations. So again, can everybody give me a thumbs up if you're watching live? I don't want to make this video too long. I want to do a bunch of little short videos for our next couple of lessons. But one more thumbs up, guys, if this makes sense. Our goal, first and foremost, is to discover, right? Discover the operative words, operative, right? Operative words to identify what the question is asking. Okay, guys, so thumbs up. That's our goal. That's the goal of this video, is you are going to find the operative words within each question type in order to identify what the question is asking. And if you could do those 2 things, if you can identify the operative words, I guarantee that you will find the SAT math test to be far easier than it may seem right now. And that's particularly true of any students that feel really comfortable with their math class, but they just can't figure out the SAT math section or sections, right? Guys, I hope you enjoyed the live stream, or I hope you enjoyed the video if you're watching the recording. Like I said, if you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to post those in the comment section below the video. If you found this to be useful, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We're amazingly over 25,000 subscribers. I can't thank you enough for those that have continued to support the channel over the last couple of years. We're going to make a lot of videos over the course of the next month, 2 months, somewhere in there. So please make sure that you subscribe and turn on all notifications so that you guys can get access to those videos in the future. And then finally, make sure that you download Star U in the App Store or Google Play. You can find more information about that in the description of the video below. But download Star U. It's a free download. You can click Lessons and Practice Problems, and all of the math content that we discussed today can be found for free, and you can go over each one of those topics and find those operative words. Again, have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world. I hope you guys stay safe, keep working hard, and we'll see you soon for the next live stream. Look out for those going forward, guys. We'll have a lot of the videos over the course of the next few months, and if you're watching the recorded videos sometime in the future, years, months, years from now, just make sure that you know that there's plenty of videos on the channel and plenty of help to come along with that. Awesome, guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you for the next stream. Thanks.